Welcome to this week's episode of the Penny Lane podcast with DTR Investing. Michael and I have formed such a good friendship since we did this interview. He's an incredible trader and such a great friend. I know you guys are going to love it. This episode is brought to you by Pennies Going in Raw. I would appreciate it so much if you guys could like and subscribe to the podcast. If you would leave us a review on Apple iTunes and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, that would be the most helpful. Thank you guys. Enjoy.
The stock market is hotter than ever right now, and traders are taking advantage. But what does that mean for the people who still haven't started trading? The market can be a little intimidating at first, but you don't have to be alone in the learning experience. We at the Pennies Going in Raw podcast are here to help you. I'm Dan, and with my co-host Hugh Henney, we make the stock market a fun but informative experience for our listeners. We offer knowledge for all levels of traders, from beginners to those who do it full time. On PGIR, we discuss up-to-date news about the stock market and interview other traders who all started out just like us and made it big. You'll hear from Hugh and other multi-millionaire traders, founders and CEOs of companies, FinTwit superstars, and even professional athletes. Have you ever thought about investing your hard-earned cash but don't know where to start? Do you have money just sitting in your savings account collecting dust? We were all there once too. Listen to Pennies Going in Raw on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, Michael, and welcome to the Penny Lane podcast. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you. I also want to welcome Champagne back. He was recently a guest on the podcast, and he's come on to help me co-host. So, hello.
Happy to help. Thanks for having me, Penny.
You know the drill now, so you feeling real comfy in this whole space. You're like, I know what's going on.
It's like a second skin. I'm just at home.
Sure,
He's got the
of course.
cozy fire behind him too, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah, he's setting a vibe for us. Okay, well, Michael, I really always like to open by just getting a little bit of history on you and sort of how you got into trading, and then if you could lead that into like where you found a place on the internet for your trading, that would be
great
awesome.
question. So I was a law student once upon a time, and during my sort of legal studies, I had sort of this mental epiphany that I am not going to be a lawyer. This is not the path for me. So I had a little bit of like, classic student breakdown. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do with my life? And reached out to everyone I knew, like try to get as many ideas as I could, and was lucky enough to have someone in sort of my, my contact list that was a trader. And so I spoke with him and sat down like at his desk, and the first time I saw it, I was just instantly hooked. And I knew from like that moment on, right, that I was going to be a trader. I was going to commit my life to that was going to be it for me.
Wait,
so after that
question.
sort of experience, yeah.
In retrospect, did he have like a sick setup, or was it just like a normal setup that you were really blown away by?
So I think it's like I just didn't know what I didn't know. So
Sure.
When I say trader, I'm talking like this guy was a financial advisor, right? Like he's
Okay.
Like he does a few like
Gotcha.
mutual fund trades, right? And he's like bigging up his resume to me. So I'm like super impressed, right? I'm as green as can be. So I'm eating it all up, right? And so I decided I'm going to try to go all in and figure out sort of what this life is like. And I was fortunate enough to go to school in the UK. So I lived in London at the time. And London has a really big FX scene. So I emailed every single FX desk I could and said, hey, I don't have class on Wednesdays. Can I come in, volunteer for you guys' work? I just want to learn about your business. And eventually someone responded and said, yeah, we'd love free labor. Like if you want to come in and we'll take you. So I went in every Wednesday and just annoyed the hell out of someone until he's like, do you want to learn how to trade? And so that's what I did, and sat down and sat with him for like 3 or 4 months, and copied all his trades, like asked every annoying question I could possibly think of, right? And sort of learned that way. Eventually from there, right, it was really fun, but it was like a commission only job. So out of school, I had student loans, I had things I wanted to pay for, and I was looking for sort of other opportunities, and was very lucky enough that through this sort of job I developed at this FX desk that I was put in touch to a pretty big, large hedge fund in the UK. So from there, I was recruited onto the execution team for a $11 billion hedge fund, and I managed or helped manage sort of their short-term technical portfolio. And I did that for about 4 years until Brexit happened, and then my right to live in the UK sort of disappeared, and it was time for me to sort of move back and go somewhere else. So I moved back to Canada and had like a pretty extensive non-compete. So I was trading my own money, was doing that sort of thing. Then COVID happened, and I decided, well, trading my own money is going really well, so let's double down and keep kind of going at it. And that's when I sort of started my internet presence. I initially kind of joined Twitter to sort of see what the other trading community was like. I mean, this was peak COVID at the time, so I mean, I think people remember how lonely it was, and trading itself can be a fairly lonely job. So kind of creating that community was something I looked forward to, and then just kind of seeing like the quality of what education was pitched at on Twitter or on YouTube or on Reddit was just kind of shocking to me to a certain capacity. And so I decided to kind of get out there and start live streaming all my trades and hopefully showing people what some good habits actually are.
Oh, great. All right, I've got questions ready to go. First of all, when you were in London, were you at Oxford?
No, I actually went to UCL, University
Cool.
College London. It was downtown. I mean, great experience for school.
My brother he's a lawyer, but he also studied in London. So it's number one. Number two, if you've listened to the Opinion Lane podcast, huge Canada fan. Massive fan of Canada. I'm so jealous. Like just today, I work for my mom, and I went into her office, and she goes, I just don't want to travel anymore. I'm not a traveler. And I was like, okay, I want to go to Canada for like 2 weeks this summer. Do you want to come? And she was like, to Canada, I travel. Okay, cool.
That's the exception.
Cool. We went a couple of summers ago with my daughter, just me. She was 3 at the time. Me and my daughter and my mom went up to Lake Louise and drove through
Oh my gosh, yeah, Alberta,
Icefields
yeah.
Parkway. It was gorgeous. And then
It's like the most turquoise lake in the world, right? It's unbelievable.
It's just so, I was really more impressed. It's called Emerald Lake. It's like a much smaller lake up there. I liked it more than Lake Louise, but it
Not
was
as touristy, right?
not as touristy. The whole trip was just phenomenal. And then when I was in college, my mom and I went to Victoria, and we went up to Whistler. So
Yeah.
it's everywhere. And also amazingly on the Lake Louise trip, I also spent a little bit of time in Toronto first and went up to, my friend has a lake house it's called Amick, like a little bit north of Toronto. So knowing the places I've been, where's the next best place to go in Canada?
Okay, great question. So I'm a little bit of a gypsy, and I've lived I move somewhere new like every 2 years. That's kind of the way I experience the world and the way I like to travel. So I've lived in Vancouver, Toronto, and now I currently live in Montreal.
Okay.
And Montreal would be sort of the city I would recommend for everyone, especially sort of in like the fall. You have like a really incredible jazz festival here. You have a really incredible food scene, and the colors, oh my gosh, they're just like drop dead gorgeous. So Montreal, I highly recommend. It feels like a little slice of Europe with just that like Canadian friendliness.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's like best of both worlds kind of thing.
Okay. Cool. Add it to the list. I like to do a little city and then a little like nature. So
there's like a couple like mountains around here and stuff like that. It's like hour and a half, 2 hour drive. You're able to do 6, 7, 10 hour hikes or whatever really, however much your legs want to take really on the afternoon.
awesome. Ooh, that was on my like to-do list, and I didn't know I was going to meet you and find out the answer. Champagne, you a big Canada fan?
Well, I'm originally from North Dakota, which is like the cousin of Canada in America. So very familiar with Canada. Been up there plenty of times. We share a passion for hockey. So, hey.
And the tundra.
and the tundra and winter and being cold. You know,
Exactly, yeah.
we bond over that.
Sure.
You just have to embrace it, right? Like
do.
it's just a mindset thing. And I think that relates so much to trading, where it's like you choose the outcome that you want, right? So like your mindset, your belief system, or like how you approach things is generally how like your outcome is going to sort of be derived, right? So if you're so scared of the cold and you want to deal with it, okay, yeah, it's going to suck, but everyone in Canada is like, all right, screw it, it's cold, but we can still go go ice fishing or have beers outside, or like
Yep.
there's like an igloo fest here where we like create like snow cabins and we have like DJs playing them, right? So it's just, you control your attitude, and then you control, right, how good of your experience you have. And I think that's so much dependent like to the market too, right? I mean, this is a market at the moment that just wants to chop us out and just spit us out every chance we get. And if we give it that opportunity to sort of like overwhelm us, and we're never going to have the chance to make good decisions, right? To look at things clearly. And so, I mean, I'm such a big believer in mindset kind of establishes everything.
That's interesting. And I have to ask you, because you made the decision to you live stream a lot of your trading, like your full trading days.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like that transparency and putting yourself out there and showing, when you make a mistake, or when you make a bad trade, or when you have a great trade, how do you think that helps you with your community?
Well, honestly, I think it's the only way to learn, right? So obviously I'm super biased because this is how I was taught, right? There's so much survivorship bias in trading in general where, okay, my strategy is the best, your strategy is the best. It's not really the case, right? There's a million different ways to skin a cat, but there's only one real way to lose your money in trading, and that's sort of bad risk management, right? So I think a lot of what the value is of live streaming is that I show people how to lose the right way, right? So if you have a losing trade, how to size your position, how to manage those emotions. And then, right, on the flip side, if you have a big win, if you have sort of a big reaction, right? So not get too greedy, not to get too arrogant, and then sort of throw your money away, right? So I think a lot of traders struggle with that patience. And yeah, I'm live streaming from 9 to 4 every single day, but like it's crickets, right? So much of the time, because it's all about patience. And a lot of new traders don't understand that, and they can't learn that from a Discord server. So you need to see it, right? Like it's like a doubting Thomas type thing where you got to see what's going on before you can kind of understand or sort of realize that this is the way to do it. And for me, right, I hate social media. I hate like the negativity that you get on Twitter. Every time I post like my P&L for the day, I get like nasty DMs, right? Like all this sort of stuff. And when you have a community and you're fully transparent with them and you're working with them and like committed to their results, you don't get that, right? Because they understand the process. They see what it's like. They respect that you're living and dying with them, I think. And I think it leads to a lot of being able to address problems as a group, right? And having that sort of strength in numbers together.
I totally agree.
Like, I mean, this is a big beef of mine in general. Like the whole, I think there is a lot of value to Discord servers and sort of this alert culture that we have in FinTwit, but there's an inherent flaw to that system, right? When someone sends out a Discord alert or a Twitter alert, right, they're sending that out after they enter the trade, right? They're sending it out after their execution. So if you're chasing that play, if you're, say, 30 seconds behind, say you're 15 seconds behind, one, you're not understanding, like you're not learning why that person was interested in that play, like what their confirmation was, what they saw that really pushed them. And then your risk reward is skewed, right? Because all of a sudden you're 30 seconds behind, and that can be 30 cents, that can be $1, that can be whatever in a security. And all of a sudden the numbers no longer sort of stack up for you. So it's all about, it's not that Discord servers can't work. It's all about adjusting that sort of framework or sort of that mindset around how you trade them to sort of incorporate them as a setup signal, right? Not as the only reason to sort of enter a trade.
Yeah.
So for me, the way I like to teach traders, the sort of way I was taught, is that you need to have a plan for every single trade, right? Oftentimes I find my losing trades or my biggest losers are the ones that I'm revenge trading, right? There's like a nasty thing in trading where the more you lose, the more setups you start to see, right? And so generally when I start to see more setups, I know that I'm kind of like going on tilt, right? Or I'm getting close to starting to make bad decisions. And so if you can catch yourself from these little mistakes, right, that's how you protect your account from blowing up, right? So risk management is a proactive, not reactive situation. And it's about creating yourself a framework to be able to dominate so you don't have any risk management failures, right? So in my opinion, like I really dislike when people say stuff like the market is really hard or the market is really challenging or, whatever, because we know this, right? We know the market's not going to go up in a straight line. what we should be saying instead, or what we should be phrasing instead, is that our framework on how we can address this market, right, is flawed, or we don't have a good way of being able to consistently approach this market and be able to make money. So it's all about finding that consistency in your approach, right? Like making things as solid and repeatable as possible. Because then when you go back and you look at things, you can see the patterns of where you failed. You can see the patterns of where you maybe need to make that little tweak and improve. And so that's what I want to try to teach the members, right? Is that sort of mindset and that sort of thought process of thinking in the setup, confirmation, execution, like kind of blueprint method. And hopefully that gets people to always kind of think through their trades, right? To sort of have a plan for every trade and to catch their breath, right, before they do enter one. Because that's another big thing, right? You get that first signal and, oh my gosh, I'm going to miss the move if I don't get it. And you get faked out or you get stopped out, right? So for me, that is really the framework that I think all traders should focus on. And I really think it translates a lot to any sort of strategy, right? There's 3 parts to it. And if you listen to sort of previous episodes, like there's a lot of the sort of strat in there, or like sort of strat influence, right? And then sort of a lot of that like singles and doubles influence, right? So if you are able to combine those 2 ideas, right, where it's enter on strength and not be greedy when you find that strength, as long as you keep your risk reward reasonable and you manage your risk appropriately, you just turn trading into a very simple, repeatable numbers game, right? So hopefully over this podcast, I can teach you guys that framework, right? And we'll go over that here in a second, but that's really the main objective of it, is to get people there. So part 1 is setup, right? It's the core concept is, why do you want to take this trade? Why it's interesting? And for me, that can be anything, right? I'm personally a support and resistance trader. So I'm looking for basically high and low, like daily high and low breakouts or daily high and low breakdowns, right? But it can be MACD cross, it could be RSI, it can be Elon Musk tweeting that him and his ex-wife are back together. Like, it really doesn't matter, right? All that it is when you're a retail trader is that you are expecting a reaction at your setup, right? So when you get an idea or when you see something happening, right, your technical analysis or your plan beforehand, all it's telling you is that when this happens, I'm expecting a reaction, not that I'm looking to get in. So if you get a MACD cross, if you get a high of day breakout, the reaction that you're expecting to see is, a big volume bar coming in, right, and a lot of strength coming in. So that is your confirmation, right? So if you get your setup, right, you get that cross, you get that breakout, you wait for that sign of strength on your confirmation, right? Then you apply your execution rules to sort of make that numbers game work. So it's a very simple kind of 3-part process, but it really helps people to just break down, catch their breath, and then hopefully be able to like slow down and find their winning plays.
That's excellent.
So
you mentioned a couple of great things there, which is excellent about finding awesome setups. What would you say is just your personal favorite indicator? If you only get one for the rest of your life, what's your indicator you're taking with you?
I personally don't use indicators, so I'm just candlesticks and volume.
Okay.
Every now and then I'll throw in some Bollinger Bands, but Bollinger Bands for me are like a support and resistance, right? They're just dynamic levels of support and resistance. So you trade them exactly the same way, right? So what I want to stress here is that the last 2 parts, right, the setup the confirmation and execution of this sort of 3-part plan, it's always the same thing, right? So it becomes muscle memory. So what your setup can actually be doesn't really matter. You can be super flexible with it, right? So if it's a choppy day and it's boring and you're not getting those breakouts, right, maybe you've got some divergent setup in the RSI that you can take advantage of, right? But you're always waiting for that thing to trigger before you start looking for your confirmation. So that's where you apply your personality, right? That's where you apply what you're personally interested in. If that has to be an indicator, if that has to be candlesticks and volume, it doesn't really matter too much, because the confirmation and execution part of things are going to help you avoid head fakes.
I have a question. Let's say you're going to enter puts, I guess, on like a low of day break. Is that something you would do?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, it depends, right? Like every trade is different. But
that's like, we'll just use that like as an example. I'm asking because I have struggled with this many times. Like, I get that strategy, but sometimes I will like take it on this level break or this low of day break, and then it immediately will like pull back and it won't hold that level. So then you're like, that, you know, that can go red. It can just like bounce off that level. But if you wait for confirmation of something other than a 1 minute candle to close and hold below that level, then sometimes it feels like you have missed the move. So then maybe you have to wait for it to come back up and retest that level. All those three options just like are head fakes for me all the time. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. In general, so there's a couple things you want to look for, right? So I try to target like a 1% move. That's generally what I'm going for. If I can get like $3 on the SPY, if I can get $10 on Tesla, that for me is pretty much a start to finish fantastic, right, setup. So I need to make sure that I'm getting or reasonably have that expectation that I can get that follow through, that there is that space. So if I have that 1% space, if I have that room to go, then I can wait for that break and hold, right? Because in theory, right, I still have sort of enough space. The unfortunate reality about trading is that you're going to have a lot of setups that come together that give you a look, but then fail on confirmation. But you just can't compromise there, right? That's what's tough. I stress this to my members all the time. As traders, we don't get paid for our time, right? We get paid for our decisions. So it's not that we have to be making 100 good day trades or we have to make be green 100 days in a row. Let's just make 100 good decisions in a row, right? There's going to be variance in those decisions. There's going to be X, Y, Z. But as long as we're really disciplined and rigid in our approach, yeah, we're going to miss trades. We're going to miss stuff that runs. But if it's only going to run 60 cents or there's no room for us, is it really worth the stress of getting involved anyway, right? So there always has to be that justification. And so for me, that's really important, right? So when I get a setup, right, I'm looking at everything on the daily time frame. So I'm looking at right daily high and low breakouts, right? I'm drawing all my patterns on there, and I've got my alert set. So alert will trigger, and then this is when I start switching to shorter time frames. So alert triggers, that setup is on, right? It's time to look for confirmation. So confirmation for me is always the same thing, and it's a rotation or kind of a sliding scale through kind of multiple time frames. So it's basically which time frame can give you your confirmation first, right? That's what you're looking for. If you get a failure on the 5, you look for the 15. If you get a failure on the 15, right, you look for the 30, et cetera, as long as your risk reward is still sort of reasonable, right? So for me, I'm always looking for, on this puts example, right, we're making a breakdown under low of day, right? We're holding and closing on what I call a full body bearish candle. So full body bearish candle means no kind of like bottom wick, right? Or very little bottom wick, right? Which for me signifies that there's no real dip buyer supporting that move. Then when I see that strength, I want to see outlier breaking volume, right, from those puts. So if bears are actually strong, if they're actually showing us that momentum, I should see that in the volume, right? So the way I describe that is you wouldn't want to go to a party if they were turning down the volume as you get there, right? So you want to see those volume bars, same color as your candle, and then increasing in volume. For me, I have a 21-day MA, I think, on my volume bars. And for me, outlier volume is sort of anything that's above that sort of 21 period MA, right? So if I get that full body candle close under and that full body volume, right, or increasing outlier strength, that for me is my confirmation. If I don't get it on the 5-minute time frame, I wait to see if I get it on the 15. If I don't get it on the 15, I wait for the 30. If I don't get it for the 30, I cry and try to find another setup.
Okay.
I feel that. I totally agree. I think, volume is king. That's really what you got to be paying attention to. When it comes to execution, a lot of what you're talking about is like just mental fortitude and mental toughness, like being able to say yes, no, like when to go, when not to go. And that's really like identifying when you're making, a good decision and when you're maybe just taking on risk that's unnecessary. How do you think like new traders can develop that ability?
So, I mean, it's muscle memory, right? That's all it is. So when I go on tilt or like when I have a bad trade, I want a revenge trade, my muscle memory is set up confirmation execution, right? So like I don't chase the level break. I wait for the break and hold. And usually if I'm waiting that 7-10 minutes it takes for a trade to go from setup to confirmation, okay, I'm probably talking myself out of it. I'm like realizing, Michael, you're being an idiot. You need to slow down here, right? So there's a lot of value in that. In general, I am a big proponent in sim trading. I think there's a lot of things that you can learn on a simulator that don't need to cost you money, right? So position sizing, right? Learning how to manage your risk, getting comfortable taking stop losses. These are things that you can learn, right? Just make them muscle memory. Now, it's not going to work if you trade on sim for 2 years. If you trade on it for like 18 months or 6 months, you got to go real money at some point. But learning the little basics, right? Learning how to just catch your breath, I think is really important. And I hate the argument when people make it to me of, oh, I'll just be disciplined, or I can't be disciplined because it's not real money. Well, if you can't be disciplined when there's nothing on the line, how can you be disciplined when you've got everything on the line, right? People lie to themselves, and they refuse to delay their gratification for just like even a weekend, that they blow their accounts up because they want to, follow the newest, hottest trader. And that's unfortunately like a huge problem we see, and really avoidable if people just wanted to learn instead of making money, right? The best traders I know are not the guys who are thinking, I'm making this decision because I want to buy a Lambo. They're not the traders who are thinking that way. They're thinking, I'm making this decision because it's the best decision, right? They're process-based, not outcome-based. And I think that's the hardest thing that most new traders struggle with, is that they're unwilling to put the time in to commit to the process to then reap the rewards of the outcome, right? As traders, we can control only a few certain things, right? We can't control what the market does unless we trade really liquid small caps like some rooms do, right? But there's a lot of things that we can control, and that's our preparation, right? Our sort of attitude to how we approach things, how we study our trades. And if you make those habits bulletproof, you're making those outcomes inevitable. I'm not saying they're going to happen tomorrow. I'm not going to say they're going to happen next week, but you're going to quickly notice where you're going wrong, and your output will quickly become positive, right? You're going to start seeing good results, and that's really hard to sell to people.
I actually Champagne, have a question for you. Champagne's a doctor, which is great. Do you think that learning how to make like split-second life and death decisions has helped you make trading decisions? I know that you're not a super fast in and out day trader. I know that about you.
Right.
But like, are you able to kind of process it of like, this is not life and death, and like quickly make a decision because of that?
I mean, you do have to look at trading as like, analytics. You're doing essentially it's an educated guess. You're putting
numbers game.
You're putting in the work to say, I think that this is what's going to happen. This is likely going to go in my favor. It's time to do this decision. And you just have to commit to it, and you just have to kind of jump in. And I think, my background probably definitely helps because I look at things very analytically. That's just the world of science. But you have to have conviction and be able to execute. And even if you're wrong, you have to be willing to stop out and say that wasn't it. We'll just try again next time.
And then to be wrong and then have conviction in your idea the next time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard one too.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of people struggle, where they have that losing trade, and maybe their issue wasn't that they had a lack of conviction or that they were wrong. Their issue was maybe like their position sizing. And because of their position sizing, all of a sudden they're like panicking and changing their strategy, or they're like completely revamping everything and not allowing variance, right? The point of risk management, the point of it being proactive, is everyone has a number that breaks them, right? Where if you lose this amount, you're just no longer thinking like a clear and rational human being. So your responsibility as a trader, right, regardless if you copy my trades, if you copy Warren Buffett's trades, right, is to define your own risk and to be responsible to keep yourself within that number, right? So if you're consistently putting yourself in situations where like you're making bad risk decisions, I mean, you don't stand a chance, right? This market's going to chew you out and spit you out so fast. So you ultimately have to be proactive in those decisions, and it's a different number for everyone, right?
I've been, I was like, for so long, my biggest weakness in trading was just like FOMOing and chasing, which didn't always work out badly for me in like 2020. Like it just was like you can FOMO and chase stuff and it'll run another however long. It's fine. Everyone can trade.
It was crazy.
And I've gotten so burned on not being patient with my entries that I am now on the sort of other side of that platform or other side of that equation of like, this is it. I know this is it. I know, but is it it? Is it it? Is this, like, and I like have been just this week, like missing entries because I am just like hesitant, which I've never done. I've never been afraid to take a trade. In fact, I was too willing. It's like for so long, too willing to take a trade. And it's been a real like, but I'm also trying to only take one trade a day. So I'm just being like, just precision about it as I can be.
Do you find it challenging to limit yourself to one trade a day?
Yeah, I don't love it. But
so I trade like 1 to 3 times a day, like at most.
I'm with you, Michael. I know that Penny over here has had some hot streaks where
like, I mean, if you trade options, I don't understand the desire to have to make a lot of decisions. Like that for me, it becomes like so stressful. I mean, and obviously like earlier, right? So much survivorship bias. So my previous job was, I was managing $40 million positions and it took me like 6 hours to get into a play, right? So I'm trading all day long. Now coming back and, work for yourself, it's pretty nice to have your feet up for like 5.5 hours a day and have your dog like looking at you like you're a psycho when you got risk on for the other hour and a half, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a much more calm lifestyle. And I will say in general, I think most traders, they should begin by trading less because the biggest problems do occur with over trading where you go on tilt and they don't know how to stop that spiral.
Yeah.
So forcing yourself to stick to 1 or 2 or 3 a day, it's tough, but there have to be situations where it's like, there's always a time to break every rule, right? Like there's nothing worse than, today I went 0 for 2, unfortunately, and I got stopped out and then things ran right in my way like 10 minutes later. And that's like typical the way these things go sometimes. And sometimes you have to have that conviction where your idea was correct, but your timing was wrong. And then still got to have the confidence to be able to jump back in. And like, that's a tough thing to wrap your head around sometimes.
Yeah. I'm actually, I said I would rather trade a lot more, but this one trade a day and then being done has kind of been delightful because I know what I'm doing. So I like make my trade and then I'm like, time to shut her down. And you
have a plan, right?
Yeah. I've been like much more present with my children and not a psychopath when they get home. And like, it's been better.
Like just mental health, like sometimes we have to protect ourselves from ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And like that's hard to do too, because we all want to grind. We all get taught that it's all about the amount of work you put in, the amount of hours you put in. But trading is so different to every other job, to every other like human experience, where it's like the more you think about money, the harder money comes, right? Where like the more you try to find a trade, right, the less confirmations you get, right? It's like you almost have to play hard to get and just be like, oh, like this market's like not really a big deal. Like I'll see you when I see you. And then that's when you start finding your trades.
Yeah.
And like, and once you start, I think, transition from being, or going to being like, I need to make good decisions instead of I need to find trades. I feel like that makes it easier to sit and wait. And maybe that's easier when you're looking at someone doing it as well. I mean, if you're home alone and all you have is like Netflix to keep you entertained, trading is really fun, right? So I understand the desire to like want to feel something, but that every time we like compromise on that discipline or like compromise on that decision, just make it easier to make a bad decision next time, right? We keep kind of compounding those things. So if you can stack up that discipline now and that patience now, maybe you're not seeing the P&L rewards you want, but you're going to see those discipline gains compound maybe 6 months from now or 8 months from now. And that's where the real benefits come.
I've been using this analogy on every pod. I don't think I'm real into the analogy. So if you're a regular listener, just hit the fast forward a little bit. But I think that trading is like going into a buffet in Vegas. So you walk into the buffet and it's like everything, like Chinese food, American food, Italian food, like all the desserts you could possibly want. And it's like, sort of like, I have thought that everything on the buffet makes you sick except one thing, which you're able to eat. But and you're starving. So like the only way to find it is to kind of like eat through all of those little things. And then you can find the thing that doesn't make you sick, but then you have to like put more discipline in. So it'd be like, today I'm going to walk into this buffet and grab one apple and leave. And like that amount of like having to discover that and then have the discipline to do that, I think is so similar to the market, especially coming in 2020, where it's like I can literally just throw money at anything. And I like, but then
it's such a deceptive environment to learn how to trade in, right? Because I mean, I'm 8.5 years into sort of my trading career now, and I've never seen a market like that, right? And albeit still a relatively junior trader or like relatively new in my sort of journey or relatively inexperienced, I've never like dealt like a long-term bear market, for example. So dealing with that sort of craziness, I mean, it almost felt like once in a lifetime, right? But if you tried to trade like you traded in July 2020, like you trade like that today, your account's gone in 30 seconds, right? Like it's you have to adapt, you have to change, and the things that worked then don't work now. And I think that's why we're seeing a big exodus from a lot of FinTwit people, right? We're seeing a lot of accounts go silent. We're seeing a lot of I'd be careful how I say it, but we're seeing a lot of pumpers kind of getting dumped a little bit, right? And it's a nice kind of like return to the norm, and hopefully this helps people to kind of filter out some of the BS that is out there.
Yeah. I also heard a statistic on our last podcast that 80% of traders don't make it through the first year. I didn't know that. I knew that like over 90% of traders end up losing over time, but I sort of thought that took a longer time. Like, that's a massive failure rate in the first year. 80%? Like, imagine being in school and 80% of your classmates are just like failing out. Like, yeah.
Well, I think the big problem, right, is if your risk management is good, it should be almost impossible to blow your account, right? Say you're risking. So for me, position sizing is a dynamic thing, right? So depending on what my stop loss is, kind of determines what my position sizing is. So for rough estimates, full position sizing for me is anything that is a 10% stop loss or less on the options, right? So if I have to take a 20% stop loss and I'm going full position sizing, there's no chance, right? The numbers don't work, right? But if I keep that risk consistent and I target 2-to-1 risk reward or better, even on positions where I have to go half position sizing, right? And I'm still going 2-to-1 risk reward or better, I still get paid, right? When those things come out. So if I keep my risk consistent, it's going to take me 100 consecutive wrong decisions to blow my account. And that's like impossible. I mean, I don't care how many times you trade, you're going to get a lucky win here or there. And like, it's impossible for that to happen, right? So there's only one way to lose, and that is to double down, to average down, to add to losers, right? To compound your mistakes instead of being like, oh, okay, I lost, so be it, it happens, and moving on, right? Like my edge, I win 75% of the time. I was profitable 74.6% of the time of my trades in 2021. So I know that 3 out of 4 days I should be green. If I have a red day, if I have a red trade, okay, so be it, right? Not the end of the world. It's not going to hurt me. It's not going to kill me. I know that as long as I keep my risk reward consistent, as long as I keep those numbers realistic, right? Then I'm going to grind back pretty easily, right? Just dealing with a little bit of bad variance, right? Dealing with a little bit of bad luck, maybe a little bit of bad human error. But I'm not going anywhere. I still can come back and trade again tomorrow, right? I haven't lost my head. I can come joke. I can go shoot the shit with my friends, right? And it's not life over for me. So again, going back, right, to that risk management is a proactive decision, right? How you want to react, what kind of person you want to be outside of markets. you make those decisions as you're trading. And if you're unable to make those decisions in the moment, or you're unable to sort of logically think about how you want to put those together, you're never going to make it. And you need to think about your approach and how you can adapt it to find that success.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I have a question just to switch gears a little bit. Like, can you walk me through like what your process is in every morning? Like when you start, do you have like favorite tickers that you like to check? Are you looking for kind of what's getting, big volume? What's kind of your process to
great question.
to filter out for hits? Yeah.
So I very much kind of maintain my institutional sort of influence in this capacity. So every bank trader, every hedge fund trader, you get a sector or like a collection of securities that you trade, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe it'll be you get tech, maybe you get oil and mining, whatever it is, right? So I focus on pretty much 7 tickers. So I trade SPY, QQQ, Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, AMD, NVIDIA. Mm-hmm. Pretty much that's it. And the reason I trade those names, because they're like consistently the names that give me good enough option volume. So one of my execution requirements is that spreads are less than 2% and option volume is 2K or greater. That's not open interest. I mean, current like amount of contracts traded that day. Right. So that helps me avoid slippage. That helps me get in whenever I want, right? Never have to worry about any sort of execution hiccups. So those 7 names consistently give me those requirements. And so I don't waste my time looking at other things.
Are you hopping in on the morning push as soon as bell opens, or are you letting things settle out for a minute?
Yeah, so I never chase action in the first 5 minutes. Try to wait for the first candles to close. But if I get that setup trigger, right, and I get that full body, full volume confirmation candle that I'm looking for, then I will have no hesitation to chase that initial action. In general, I would say about 90% of my trades occur between sort of 9:35 and 11:30 or so in the morning.
Nice. Do you try to kind of leave, kind of be done in the morning and kind of walk away after that?
So my dog needs exercise. So for me at lunchtime, I always go take him out for a run or go do some exercise with him, and then come back for power hour. But realistically, 90% of the time, like I said, it's 9:30 to 11:30. So when I get the majority of my trades, majority of my action. And then if I catch something, I'm going real baby size in the afternoon and just kind of trying not to give anything away or be greedy or anything along those lines.
Right. Are there any tickers that you don't like trading, like that you just have an aversion to? I personally, I don't know why. I'm like just incapable of trading Apple. Every single time I trade it, it just is, it's an L, and I just have to walk away. Is there anything that you don't like trading?
For me, I mean, I just avoid high spread names. That for me is where I struggle. Any name that gives me a inconsistent spread or kind of a spread that is too bouncy, those scare the shit out of me. Because they hurt you on the way up, they hurt you on the way down, and especially if you get flushed, stop loss on like some calls or something like that. If that volume disappears from like a pen, and that spread becomes like 25% just like that, and all of a sudden, no thank you, right? Like it's just not worth the stress. So that's why I focus on my sort of 7 tickers and get that consistency that way.
Yeah, to the point of what Penny was talking about, very liquid tickers, which you were talking about, high volume, things that you can move in and out of pretty easily. And just in case people don't know, Michael, could you just explain like what a spread is, what the spread is?
Yeah, it's just the difference between bid and ask, right? So I guess the enthusiasm, right? Difference between the enthusiasm between the buyers and the sellers, right? And then how many there are determines how big or how small that spread is. So you want more, contracts being exchanged on both sides, right? The more interest there is, right, the tighter that spread's going to be, and hopefully a more efficient entry for you.
Excellent. Are you back, Penny?
I'm back. My camera's not quite back.
Yeah, actually, I forgot to answer one part of your question. So morning routine.
I
think this is one thing I'm very proud of. I love my routine. But I'm one of those people that wakes up really early. So I'm up usually most days around between 5 and 5:30, most days Eastern. And I'm spending about an hour in bed with my coffee, cuddle up with my dog, just like pounding through news. So I'm reading as much Bloomberg as I can, as much CNBC, trying to keep up with what's sort of going on. These days, it's a lot of what the hell is going on in Europe, right? Trying to get a view of that. And then go do a little bit of exercise, go walk my dog. And then I come in sitting at my desk about 7 o'clock in the morning doing sort of my pre-market stuff. So I spend about an hour or so each morning kind of putting together my blueprints, putting together all my plans, kind of determining what I'm going or how I'm going to trade today. Personally, I don't place any trades unless I sort of have a plan for it. So for me, I always have breakout or breakdown at high or low, right? Always have a plan on how to trade that. So have plenty of opportunities, get plenty of looks. Just then a question of just being patient and waiting for them to all to come together. But just making sure I'm not missing anything, making sure my technical analysis is good, and then putting together also the documents I do for my members.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That's great.
Do you do any meditating? I'm on a meditating kick, so.
I have previously. I tend to find, like, I'm a big runner. So I tend to go bash out runs, and I find that to be when I get that sort of mental clarity. So
Totally.
that for me is sort of how I do it. I'm too fidgety to be able to stay in one spot and meditate. I've tried before. I can never get past like 15, 20 minutes. But runs, I mean, I can just go, like before we did this podcast, it was snowing outside. I wanted to go for a run, had a losing day. Just clear out all that stress, like you clear out all that pressure, and nothing happened, right?
Yeah. I used to be I would just swim for a really long time. It was my favorite form of exercise. And there's a real connection there between the swimming and the meditating.
Yeah, like you just get locked in. Like you just find that flow state. And
yeah,
I feel like sometimes you can find it when you're trading too. And if you train yourself to like get into it through meditation or through exercise, you can find yourself in these moments where it's like you look at your clock, it's 9:30, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, whoa, it's lunch, I'm hungry. Like that was the quickest morning of all time, and that was an absolute blast, right? When you get those days, that's when like this is just the best job in the world.
Totally.
Michael, have you ever taken a break from trading?
Yeah, great question. So I had a pretty long non-compete after my previous job ended. So I wasn't allowed to work for anyone officially for about 12 months. They paid me not to do that, which was like an incredible situation. So I spent about 3 months then sort of traveling, got my dog, just kind of like setting up my life so that when I did get back into trading, it was where I wanted it to be. So I spent a little bit of time doing that. But other than that, like trading is my favorite thing I do in the world. Like I wake up every single morning because it's like I'm a kid at Christmas and my alarm can't keep me down, right? So I have to get up. Like I'm super excited every morning. I'm ready to go. I'm roaring to go. This is my life. This is all I think about. This is all I'm in. And so I'm all in all the time. And this idea of having like a work-life balance with trading, I don't subscribe to that theory. Trading is part of who I am. It's a part of my life. And if it's my job, well, it never feels like one. So if someone says I'm working too hard, that's their opinion, not mine.
I like that. That's good.
Well, have you, what's the best thing that you have discovered from having this room? Is it in sort of like, what are you learning from the people who join you in the room?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's crushed a lot of my, I guess like biases. So when I started trading, everyone who I traded with was all the same profile, right? They all graduated from certain schools. They all graduated with certain degrees. They all graduated with certain grades, right? And if you couldn't meet those very basic benchmarks, you just weren't considered good enough or smart enough to be a trader. And that's complete bullshit, right? Like the trading is maybe 10% technical, right? And it's like 90% mental, right? So it's all about, can you be in control of yourself? And that's not like, I don't know, you can't judge that by like books or your grades or whatever. That's your own like personal, I guess, experience. And so just seeing the variety of members and the different types of personalities and learning how to teach them has been like super exhilarating for me. And selfishly, right, I'm the type of personality that learns by teaching. Mm-hmm. So by having all these people, all these people, by having this community that is reliant on me to a certain extent, I want to be careful how I phrase that, right? But who wants to listen to me every single morning, right? Talk about the market. I love it. It motivates me so much. And so I've definitely become a much better trader because of them. And hopefully they will say the opposite for me. right? Where they became better because. So I think there's a good relationship there, and it's way more fun than I ever expected it to be.
I have a good friend, Real Simple Ariel, who I've spent a lot of time on the phone with, and he's a wonderful swing trade. I mean, he went from a day trader to a swing trader, but he spends so much time doing one-on-ones with people because he says that it like reinforces good habits, it reinforces his rules, it reinforces his whole philosophy. So he like thinks of those teaching sessions as like selfish to an extent of like it's doing nothing but good things for me, but like also he's so generous with his time.
And I think there is a fine line there, because there are people who will waste your time. There are people who you can't help, right? Like who you can't communicate with, right? And that's like really frustrating and really challenging. But you like same thing as trading, right? You're not going to be able to win every trade, and you kind of have to have that expectation. Doesn't mean I'm not going to give you my everything, but there is a two-way, right? You get as much as you put in, and there is unfortunately a really big culture of I just want to get rich quick. I want to get rich fast. I want this to be my lottery ticket. If I don't become rich by the end of the week, holy shit, this was such a scam. Like, what an asshole. And that's not how things work, right?
Yeah.
And that for me is the biggest thing I hope to bring to people. That's why I post my P&L every day. That's why I do all those sort of things, is to bring that transparency about what this life is like. And it's incredible, right? It's so much fun. I mean, probably going to make $1 million this year, right? Like it's an incredible experience, but it's not easy, right? But the second you realize that being poor isn't easy, right? That mopping floors at a school isn't easy, nothing is. So if you want to do it, you got to put in the work, and you're going to be able to achieve what you want. So that's what I would say to people, right? Is the market doesn't care if you're poor or rich. It doesn't care where you went to school, who you're married to, what you look like. All it cares about is if you have that discipline to remain in control. And if you do, it is an ATM for you. If you don't, it's an ATM for the market. And you have to choose which side of that relationship you want to be on.
I love your approach to education, because I think that there's, like an alert system is great, but if you don't understand the reasoning behind it, what the setup is, what the reason for entering, or, setting up a risk reward, if you don't understand the whole trade, it can be really difficult. So I think education is important. And I think it's a big component that's kind of like lacking from FinTwit, unfortunately. Do you think that there's anything that you would consider like mandatory reading or a mandatory like resource to check out that for somebody who's interested in the market, maybe is just trying to see if this is something they want to try out?
Honestly, I would recommend to everyone, go on a sim account, load up $100,000, and just keep averaging down until you blow up your account. It's going to take you 5 trades, right? So learn how easy it is to lose everything, right? Yeah. This is a video game, right? In reality, in trading, right, the amount of money you have in your account doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that we all have one life, right? We've got one chance to fill that up. So you need to realize how precious that life is, or in this, in this sort of context. And so see how easy it is to blow up, right? If you see how easy it is, how quick it can happen, you're going to be like, okay, I shouldn't do this. As for books, I mean, I'm a big fan of Trading in the Zone. I think that's a really good book. But honestly, don't read a trading book until you've placed a trade. That would be my other advice, right? You got to know what you're reading, why you're reading it, instead of confusing yourself. So sometimes the best education, the best resource is just jumping in there, going head first, and see what happens on the other side, right? And as long as your risk management is good, as long as you're predefining your risk before you jump in, you got 100 jumps, right, before it's kaputs.
I heard from someone, and then I've said it so much it's become my own saying. I like to do that. I like to do a little rebrand, and then I'm like, I came up with this.
Well, you have the podcast. That's what it's for, right?
It's the best way to learn how to trade an option is to buy an option.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to learn about the Greeks. You just need to learn how painful they are when they work against you.
Yeah. Or like how it you're not going to understand how it like corresponds to the underlying, or you're not going to understand it. None of that is going to work in your brain unless you've had an option. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh.
And it's like, the market is so different. You mentioned something about one-on-one coaching earlier. And like, I like the idea of one-on-one coaching, but outside of market hours, I'm never wrong, right? In hindsight, I'm never wrong. And so it can be really powerful if you have a like really strong trading journal to sort of compare yourself to. But if you're like only learning how to trade from like outside of market hours, I think there's really limited amounts of what you can do, because there's such a difference between seeing it live and seeing how it feels when it's kind of growing and building, and that like you feel that like, you know, feeling in your stomach, right? Like that anticipation.
Yeah.
You don't feel that, you know, outside of market hours. And that's like learning how to think under that emotional pressure is so much of what trading is.
You know, I've been in that situation a couple of times where someone tries to read me a chart, like an old chart, you know, and they're like, well, it went up here, it flagged, it came down, it bounced off the 50. Like you get how like easy this is, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, I know how to read a chart after the day's over. Like everyone's a genius.
Like, it creates, I think, it creates a misconception, right? So if like you're building your strategy based on what you're seeing on a chart when you're studying 4:30 to 9 every night, awesome. I love that work you're putting in, but you're expecting now that your strategy is going to work 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's never failed. You've never seen it fail before, right?
Right.
And so when it does, you're going to panic. You're going to have a really bad reaction to it, and you're going to lose your money, right? You're going to lose more than you expected, or who knows, right? You're going to have a bad decision after you lose that money. And it's good, but again, same thing like trading on sim.
Yeah.
Too much of it, not a good thing.
If you've never cursed at a candle, you don't know what you're doing.
Oh, you haven't
Sure.
lived.
Yeah. I for a while I was had comments, and I like to trade low float stocks that rode the 9 EMA. Like it was all I was trying to do was get in a stock and have it ride the 9 the whole day. And like at the end of the day, if I wasn't able to do that, like people would like send me charts like, well, why weren't you in this one? It held the 9 all day. I'm like, well, everything holds the 9 until it doesn't hold the 9. Like I'm not
it's
a
lagging
genius.
indicator
I
too,
can't
right?
predict.
I know. Like, that's so frustrating, right? You get the captain hindsight for everything you do. And like what sucks, I think, about FinTwit is the way people combat that is deleting tweets, right? It's like, well, you can't get mad at me if I deleted my tweet. It didn't happen. Like, oh man, like that lack of transparency sucks. Like there's too many accounts on here where they're like 14-year-old kids who are in middle school and they've got 30,000 followers. Whoa, like you're learning from this person? Like I respect like their social media game. Like they're really good at growing an account, but are you sure you want to learn from them as like a trader? Like, is that scary, right? Like I'll be surprised if there isn't regulation that comes into the space at some point. Cause I mean, there's like, I don't know, there's so many charlatans, it feels like, right? Of people living off of their courses or, you know, selling you this lifestyle, and that's what grows their Twitter accounts or grows their Instagram. Then that's what grows their business, right? It's people are falling for the wrong things, and social media just brings out the very worst in that. And I mean, you talk about why 80% of people drop out after a year, right? Well, it's because 80% of people are thinking the same way, right? This market doesn't it rewards a herd mentality to a certain extent, but 80% of the people are not having that discipline, they're not having that patience, right? And it crushes them, and they're all chasing that same, I want to get rich quick, I want those super easy gains, I want that never lose mentality, and it never sets up. So of course those people fail, right? They're not putting themselves in a position to succeed. Whereas the other 20%, right, maybe they grind for a year, 2 years, but whatever it takes, they eventually figure it out and sort of get themselves on their feet. And then they realize, okay, I was struggling. I was like maybe losing 10, 20 grand a year. But like once you start making money as a trader, those are nothing, right? Those are like one day, right?
Yeah.
Like the way it compounds, the way it scales is so fast. So I said this before, right? Don't fall in love with the outcome, fall in love with the process, then the outcome will take care of itself.
Do you think live streaming adds more pressure to you, or are you just like normalized to it now where it's just the way it is for you?
Sometimes. I would say definitely I can feel the pressure sometimes. And the way I combat it is I just say I'm feeling this pressure, guys. So, hey, I'm feeling it. I'm going to be really careful. And I just say my thoughts out loud. Really, for me, the way I act on stream is it's like if I have a thought, I'm basically saying it. Now, that probably means I shouldn't ever be live all day, like on a public stream. I'll get like God knows what I'll say and get myself canceled or something like that. But as long as I'm talking stream of consciousness, stream of market, you know, I will say these thoughts, right? I will say these emotions. I'll be super transparent about that because we all feel these as traders. And generally, when I'm feeling that pressure or I'm feeling that anxiety, I'm not making a good decision. I'm making a decision because I want to be a performer, not a trader. And so I need to reel myself back in and be like, well, if you want to be an actor, move to Hollywood, right? Like I'm a trader first. I'm everything else second. So I always need to kind of keep myself grounded in that space.
The way that
awesome, yeah.
Champagne and I know each other is that we're both in Shark's room. He's a trader on FinTwit. Yeah. And he live like voice streams all day. He doesn't do a screen share or whatever. And when I first joined, he doesn't listen to the podcast, so I can say whatever I want. When I first was listening to him, I would get a little bit frustrated because he would say like, you know, if this happens, then this will happen, but it also like, you know, something that would make it bullish. And he's like, but that could also be a bear flag forming. And that like he would provide different scenarios sort of like for people on both sides of the trade. But like sometimes he would be long or short, but he would play both sides or whatever. And at first I was like, it's either black or white. It's like, what are you doing? You're freaking me out by being like, oh, I'm long, but here's a short opportunity or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I've really grown to appreciate like how much of the overall picture he really grasps, because obviously even if you're long in something, there could be a short opportunity just depending on how you're playing it or whatever. But
maybe that's your exit signal, right? Like there's so many variables in trading.
Yeah.
Like it's impossible to just like pick one. So anyone like Shark is one of those guys I definitely respect, right? Like anyone that has anyone who's willing to put themselves out there, right? Where
I was hoping you were going to say has the balls too.
Yeah.
Seems like,
right.
Seems
that's
like
what
what you should have said. Yeah.
Right. Where like you have the confidence in yourself as a trader. We'd be like, okay, fuck it. I'm going to have red days. I'm going to have losing days, but I'm going to have more green days than red. And I can help people do the same thing. I respect anyone who does that, right? I respect because there's a million different ways to skin a cat. So I can't say your strategy doesn't work. I can't say mine is better. That's not for me to judge, right? All I will say is that those who offer that level of transparency are better than those who don't. And so anyone who does that instantly has my respect because I've been doing this for almost a year now. And I mean, I feel what the pressure is like, right? And if you have a room that's got a couple thousand members or it's got, you know, a much bigger number than that, that's got to be, there's a weight to that, right? And there's a weight to being honest and being transparent all the time. And it's not the easy path. And it's the path of most resistance. And it's the hardest way to get customers.
Yeah.
But those are the businesses or those are the rooms that you want to be a part of.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
It could have, like, thinking back to the last, I think around 10-ish months of the podcast, like, how easy it would have been for me to just, like, post one green trade a day. Like I was having one great trade a day. I would just give it all back or screw up in some other way or whatever. But just how, like knowing the kind of power I could have had on that with the podcast. And if I was able to present on Twitter that I was like literally killing it every single day, like it's like Icarus or something, right?
There's a lot of people that don't have that same moral fortitude, right? To realize
totally
that,
agree.
Hey, I'm not in a position to be a teacher, right? Or I'm a learner. And that's like, it's a marketing trap, right? People are getting convinced by marketing, not by trading. And man, it's sad because you're seeing a lot of people lose their money, losing whatever, God knows what. And it was really avoidable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, we're sort of at the end of our time. I could keep talking to you. I learned a ton, actually.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, my
I mean,
pleasure. So if I don't know when this will air, but for those who are interested, I do free live streams every Wednesday on YouTube. So if you're ever interested in checking it out, come trade with me, come ask questions, come annoy me for 7 hours, make me lose my voice. So you can always check that out. No credit card required, none of that kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
awesome. That's
I
fantastic.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to give back, right? I'm a trader first, room operator second. I make money from trading, not from my room.
Ooh, I
and
like
I want
that.
to be very transparent about that. And that's what I call the DTR advantage. Transparent, we're honest. I show you my setups, I show you my take profits, everything else. But ultimately, it's up to you to apply that and to make it your own.
Totally.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I really respect you.
Well, thank you so
This
much.
has been
And
awesome.
let's all stay in
Absolutely
touch.
the same.
Send me Twitter messages and we'll all stay in touch for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Hey,
Thank
you
you so
got
much.
it.
Have a good day.
All right.